Admotif says, what's Baldur's Gate? You know, Admotif, I'm actually going to answer this in a slightly circumspect way, okay? I'm not actually going to tell you a lot of the content of the Baldur's Gate series, like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Instead, what I'm going to do is talk about the significance of the Baldur's Gate games when they came out. So, the original form of an RPG comes from tabletop gaming. The idea that you are literally playing a role. Ooh, I'm going to pretend that I'm a powerful wizard, and I'm going to role play as that with my friends. And in addition to that role playing, there were these game systems in the tabletop game that involved dice rolling and probabilities, and here's how combat worked, and here's how additional itemization worked, and yada yada yada. But really, that role playing element was foundational to those early tabletop games. And so when digital games came about, there's this incredible benefit that you get with a digital game over a tabletop or a board game experience, which is that you can track all the information and make things happen way more quickly. If you've ever played a board game or a TTRPG, sometimes things just take forever. Like when people level up, it takes like an hour sometimes just to have people level up. Whereas in a digital setting, you can go, okay, this character, click, 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 this character, click, click, this character, click, click. Or if there's effects that happened at end of turn, the digital client takes care of it immediately. So there was a lot of opportunity in the early gaming days to take the experience. You gotta say an hour is definitely fast. Yeah. Enormous gnome finger guns. So, where was I going? Oh yeah, so there started to be a lot of attempts to translate that tabletop RPG experience into a digital setting, and there were a lot of hits and misses. For instance, one thing that became really clear is that because it's so easy to track all these systems, you can almost trace this entire trajectory of RPGs that focused heavily on the system side of things. One really good example of this is Diablo 1. Yes, it has a beautiful story, but the gameplay itself is not about role-playing. It is about combat, the raw numbers, managing gauges, collecting loot, changing the loot out, just like really emphasizing the system side of thing as opposed to the character's identity and, again, that role-playing side. And there were a number of games that went down the route of, okay, well, let's really emphasize the role-playing. Sure, we want to have the systems and the combat stuff be there, but I really want the character and who the character is and their decisions and what they say to people to be the main thing that impacts things. And that's where there was a lot of shit that went wrong. Because with stats, it's actually very, very easy with systems to handle a lot of cases dynamically. If you say, here's what health is and here's what damage is, you just create all sorts of different enemies with all sorts of different health. Start adding in resistances and armor and cooldowns and stun and just more axes of combat. You instantly can generate hundreds of different enemies almost procedurally and create hundreds of different experiences. With role-playing, you kind of have to just manage a lot of if-then statements. Well, if you've said this to the queen and not said that to the doorman, then this is the case, and then if not this, then that, and oh gosh, it literally takes like hours to just manage a 5-minute dialogue and make sure that all the if-thens are properly connected together. So you can literally look up on YouTube. I remember when I was in grad school, a professor just showed like 10 videos in a row of how you can break a narrative in a game because these if-thens are so hard to track. As in, there are games where it's like there's House A and House B, and you can ally with House A and kill House B, or vice versa. But you can also do something where you can, like, half complete this, go to the other house, do some stuff, half complete the other one, kill everyone, and then a character just comes back to life and is like, thank you so much for clearing out the other house. Same with the other one, and all of a sudden you've completed both houses' quest, all the people you've killed have come back to life, because it's literally so fucking hard to keep track of all the possibilities that you're doing. And so, um, let's rewind time again. There was a lot of um, really interesting early exploration in digital games, trying to translate that tabletop role playing experience to the digital space. And one of the really big early successes, though technically was Baldur's Gate 1, was really Baldur's Gate 2. Like, I almost imagine that Baldur's Gate 1 was kind of like getting the technology and getting the footing in place as like a first like proof of concept, and Baldur's Gate 2 is where they really fucking kick the door open, and the ability to customize your experience was substantially better than a lot of its peers at the time. And in particular, Baldur's Gate uses the Dungeons and Dragons systems. And so, I mean, if you look at the menu screen of this game, it says Larian Studios and Wizards of the Coast, the developers of D&D. And so it was one of the very early best encapsulations of that experience of I really get to play the way that I want to play and feel like I can play through Baldur's Gate 2 multiple times and get different play experiences. Oh, so great. So, from when Baldur's Gate 2 came out, and Baldur's Gate 2 was it 2000? Was it earlier than that? What was the year of Baldur's Gate 2? It was it 2000 and... No, was it 98? I think it was actually pre-2000. I'm pretty sure it was 98 because that's when all the greatest games came out. Oh, Baldur's Gate 1 was 98 and Baldur's Gate 2 was 2000. Okay, I'm the coolest. I'm the greatest ever. So if you trace from 2000 up to today, there's been a really interesting trajectory in terms of games where, humorously enough, with the release of Halo and the original Xbox, that I can't call the Xbox One because fucking names, with the release of the original Xbox, games like Halo, and a push towards more mass market appeal, there was this kind of fascinating pushback that you could read about if you were like me and I had a subscription to PC Gamer and shit. There was this pushback of people that played the hardcore graphic adventure games and RPGs, a pushback to the casual first-person shooters. Oh, these games that are not about really being challenged and being in a rich, immersive space. It's just a casual gameplay experience. FPS is just going for the quick adrenaline. And so there was this real push towards accessibility, making this game easier for more people to play. And then you had mobile games coming out, which tried to push that even further. And there was a lot of, in the late 2000s and early 2010s, a lot of push towards accessibility that kind of continues to cascade forward. What was really interesting is that there was this undercurrent of these classic RPGs continuing to get made that were heavily focused again on deep rich systems and deep rich role-playing. And Larian comes along and makes Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2, which are not just amazing games, but sort of parallel this growth of popularity of the old school tabletop role-playing games that somehow are getting this mass market growth. Twitch was a really big spreader of Dungeons and Dragons. You know, people like ItMeJP doing the roleplay series, and Misclicks doing their roleplay series, where it started to just like spread this interest, broadly speaking, in these sort of richer, deeper historical TTRPG systems. And so with Divinity Original Sin 2 crushing and doing great in terms of sales, like somewhere like close to 10 million sales, like a staggering amount for a genre that from like 2000 to 2020 was considered more niche and more hardcore. It sort of just like spiked up really, really hard in the last few years, this interest in CRPGs. CRPGs, I don't know what the C officially stands for now. I think it was originally computer RPGs, and now it's called a classic RPG. But because there has been a renewed surge in interest in this genre. I need to put an asterisk here because the games industry was much smaller in 2000 than it was now. So even talking about size comparisons in absolute sense is a little bit of an erroneous comparison. But still, it feels like there's been this upswing in interest in CRPGs with games like Pillars of Eternity, Tyranny coming out of Obsidian, with obviously the Divinity Original Sin games from Larian. And now with Baldur's Gate 3, it's this kind of perfect storm of excitement where there's a ton of people who have nostalgia for the sort of just media impact that Baldur's Gate 2 had at the time. Who are like, oh my gosh, I can get that new, fresh, amazing experience again with Baldur's Gate 3. There's also this excitement at the fact that Larian, who are just a god-tier game dev, who did Divinity Original Sin 2, which is considered one of the best classic RPG styles of all time, they're releasing a sequel. Or not a sequel soon. They're releasing their next game that is also a sequel to Baldur's Gate 2. And then there's also the fact that there is an extraordinarily large modern-day interest in the traditional D&D style gameplay experience. So you have all these people that have been like playing TTRPGs who don't even really care that much what's happening in the digital game space. Or maybe they'll just play popular games here and there, but they'll just be like, yo, I heard that this game is like the best Dungeons & Dragons thing to play right now. Like I have had 3 of my friends that largely do tabletop gaming be like, dude, are you getting hyped about Baldur's Gate 3? It's incredible. And so when you say, hey, what's Baldur's Gate 2 and what's Baldur's Gate 3? I'm less interested in saying, here is what the game is gameplay-wise, here's what the story is, here's what the characters are, and all this sort of stuff. But I think what's more interesting is why there's so much hype around it, and why I think that if you're interested in playing this kind of game, it's an amazing one to step into, as long as the second thing that you play is Fallout 1. Done.